ผ่านมาสู่แบบเรียนประวัติศาสตร์แบบเรียนภาษาไทยที่แบบเรียนประวัติศาสตร์แบบเรียนภาษาไทยที่สอนให้เด็กเนี่ยไม่รู้จักตั้งคำถามแต่ว่าเรียนอย่างเดียวเพื่อจำแล้วก็เอาไปสอบค่ะ
In a country which has seen a dozen coups since becoming a democracy in 1932, history textbooks are especially contentious, glossing over events like the massacre of pro-democracy university students in the 70s, instead focusing on promoting the monarchy. The students are planning a rally outside the Education Ministry on Saturday. They've called on others to attend and, quote, say goodbye to the dinosaurs. Youth-led demonstrations have rocked Thailand since July. Protesters are calling for the resignation of the Prime Minister, a new constitution, and reform of the monarchy.
Restaurants across France remain closed due to the coronavirus pandemic. While some chefs have hung up their aprons, others have decided to band together and put their skills to good use and help the country's most vulnerable. Well, our team have been to a restaurant in central Paris to find out more.
The doors of this Parisian restaurant may be shut, but inside its kitchen is as busy as ever. It's all hands on deck for these chefs, who are here as part of an initiative by the chance.
Et tout de suite, en 4 secondes, l'équipe se forme. Un regard, salut, tu vas bien? Bonjour, hop, on se tutoie. Et ça part, quoi. Et tout le monde fonce dans les oignons, vous avez vu, dans les oignons, dans les poissons, dans les crumbles. Et tout le monde est fier et ravi. Et on est fiers d'être chefs.
The hospitality sector has been slammed by the pandemic. Some industry experts estimate that up to a third of restaurants in the Paris region alone are at risk of closing for good. This chef worked for a well-known caterer until it went bankrupt.
Là, je suis victime du Covid et du confinement. Mais en attendant, puisque j'ai du temps pour moi, j'essaie de le mettre à profit pour les gens qui en ont besoin. Et puis ça donne un petit peu un sens à votre métier.
In a single day, this army of chefs prepared over 2,000 meals, which were then sent to food banks across the Paris region, including this church on the other side of the city.
Ils sont très haut placés, mais ils pensent quand même aux plus pauvres que nous avons, que nous accueillons. Ils disent que c'est très bon. Ils disent ça vient d'où, c'est quoi? Et alors à ce moment-là, on leur explique d'où ça vient.
Initiatives like these have been welcomed by aid groups. The number of people in France requesting food aid has surged 50% during the pandemic.
Well, that brings us up to date with the international news this hour. Do stay with us. This is France 24.
I'm Natalie Savaricas, and you'll usually find me in news, reporting on Greece's enduring financial turmoil and protests, but also the refugee emergency, here on France 24.
Natalie Savaricas, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
Sit back and enjoy your program with Air France Protect, promising you a pleasant trip with total peace of mind.
Hello and welcome to this literary edition of Encore as we take a look at the winner of this year's Booker Prize. Douglas Stewart's debut novel Shuggie Bain wowed the judges, who said it's destined to become a classic. It's a story of poverty, addiction and the fierce love between a mother and a son in 1980s Glasgow. The Booker Prize is the UK's top literary award, going to an original novel written in the English language, and it also comes with a £50,000 cheque. There was a socially distanced ceremony for the prize this year in which Barack Obama made a guest appearance. So to tell us more about the winning book and its freshly crowned author, France 24's Catherine Kadir-Clifford joins me on set. Hi, Cathy.
Hi.
Now, tell us about Douglas Stewart. I believe the Scottish author grew up on a housing estate in Glasgow with no books in the family home.
Yes, Douglas Stewart, a 44-year-old Scottish author and fashion designer based in New York, but coming from a very different background, he's only the second Scottish author to win in the prize's 51-year history. And he drew on these experiences growing up in these housing estates in Glasgow, very deprived areas, when he was writing Shuggie Bain, growing up gay as well in these rough areas, and also living with this single mother who he had to care for and who died when he was 16. And in his acceptance speech for the prize, he hailed the win as a tribute for working class voices and working class stories, as well as paying tribute to his mother, who is at the centre of the story.
Sorry, I'm absolutely stunned. I didn't expect that at all. I'd like to, first of all, just thank my mother. I think I've been clear that my mother is in every page of this book, and without her, I wouldn't be here, and my work wouldn't be here.
You can see he's very emotional there. But what about this book, Shuggie Bain?
So it's about a young boy growing up in a deprived housing estate in 1980s Glasgow. It's written in simple language. It's not experimental in form and style in the way that some Booker choices can be. It's written in Scots language, in slang. And to give you an idea of the story, when Shuggie's mother's second marriage breaks down, her addiction and alcoholism spirals out of control, and Shuggie is left to look after his mother at a very, very young age. Their relationship between mother and son, between mother, who's called Agnes, is really at the heart of the story. And Douglas Stewart doesn't shy away from the horrific details of this addiction, alcoholism, child deprivation. But at the same time, he injects a lot of love and compassion and humour into it. And the character of Agnes is really well drawn. She could have been a monstrous character, but instead we see her as somebody who's very fierce and proud and tough, who's been really held back by her circumstances. As well as this fantastic characterization, we also get a really great sense of place. 1980s Glasgow, it was a difficult time. The fall of industries such as shipbuilding, a lot of working class people were on benefits, but through this grey picture, a lot of colour shines through in the way that he describes the city and its people. And for me, having lived in Glasgow, I really recognise the kindness and dry humour of Glaswegians, which was lovely.
Drawing on a lot of autobiographical detail there then. But what is incredible is that this is his first attempt at literature, first novel. He's only the fourth debut novelist to win the prize in its 51-year history. This year's shortlist was also a bit of a break from tradition as well. Tell us why.
Yes, it was really a focus on new voices this year. There were a record 4 debut novels on the shortlist. That's despite major names not making it past the long list, such as Hilary Mantel, which was really a big surprise. A lot of people thought she would win again, and Anne Tyler, for example. It was also hailed as the most diverse shortlist in the prize's history. 4 of the 6 novelists are women. 4 are writers of colour, and the 2 men on the list both identify as queer. Booker Prizes, the prize often has a reputation for picking unreadable, highbrow sort of novels, and really this year I don't think you can say that about any of them, and in particular the winner.
It does sound indeed like a very universal story, but what about this choice? Do you agree with it, Kathy? I mean, what was your favourite book from the shortlist?
So I did really enjoy this. I think it's a very deserving choice. But I really, really loved this novel. I'd like to recommend Burnt Sugar by Avni Doshi. It's also explores a complex mother-daughter mother-child relationship, in this case mother-daughter relationship, a theme very present on the shortlist. It's about a woman caring for her mother who's developing dementia, and she's battling between some very complex feelings of hatred and resentment for her mother, caused by deprivation, and the need to care for her as she becomes helpless. And I just love the dark humour in this novel.
OK, well, definitely one to check out as well. Thank you very much for that, Kathy. Now, we're staying with literature, with a book that may not have found its way to the Booker Prize shortlist, but it's certainly not suffering from a lack of interest, selling 890,000 copies in North America in just 24 hours after its release. A Promised Land is the first of 2 memoirs written by Barack Obama, focusing mostly on his time in the White House. The 44th President of the United States has said he didn't anticipate the book being so long, weighing in at over 700 pages, but that he simply needed more words. Julia Kim has this story.
I wanted to tell a more personal story that might inspire young people considering a life of public service. How my career in politics really started with a search for a place to fit in.
Published in 23 countries, from Finnish to Vietnamese, the release of Barack Obama's memoirs has been likened to a Hollywood blockbuster, with its own trailer on social media. It all started in 2017 with the couple's record €60 million book deal with Crown, a subsidiary of literary juggernauts Penguin Random House. Nearly 4 years later, the over 700-page tome has finally dropped, a boon to bookstores hit by the pandemic.
It both widens our audience and also, helps us financially get through. And I think this is going to be the big book of the year, in particular this season.
Obama begins with his days at Columbia University, recounting the click of cars being locked as he, a black student, walked down the street. He also delves into the so-called birther controversy, which blighted his presidency and was rekindled again and again by his opponents, like Donald Trump.
Every president has been held to a different standard relative to this president. I think Donald Trump breached so many norms, so many basic assumptions about what a president should or should not do, that you can't come up with a comparable set of behaviors in the past.
And one notable moment is also detailed, the night of the 1st to the 2nd of May 2011, when he gave the order to raid Osama bin Laden's hideout in Pakistan against the wishes of Joe Biden. A Promised Land is just the first installment. The second book is yet to come.
Here in Europe, people in many countries are living under full or partial lockdowns in an effort to contain a second wave of COVID-19 infections. That means that non-essential retailers have been ordered to shut down. And the question is, just how essential are books? Or whether we can or can't live without them differs from place to place. Yuka Roya takes a look in this report.
There are no customers, but books are flying off the shelves at this bookstore in Paris. Under France's current lockdown rules, people are allowed to order goods online or by telephone and pick them up at their local shops.
We gather all the orders here, label them, and then notify our customers that they can come and collect them when they want, between noon and 7 p.m.
Deemed non-essential by the government, all bookstores in the country had to pull their shutters down on the 30th of October. Many small businesses don't have the capacity to sell on the net themselves. In the UK, a new online platform is helping local booksellers compete against the likes of Amazon. First launched in the United States, Bookshop.org has already attracted 250 of Britain's 850 independent stores to sign on.
It's a marvellous initiative. It's had some wonderful publicity, and it's fulfilling a gap that has long been there for people who want to shop online but don't want to use Amazon.
In some countries like Germany, Switzerland and Belgium, the authorities have decided to include books among essential goods as they imposed tight restrictions on businesses. In Brussels, bookshops and libraries remain open despite a lockdown.
Books were deemed essential in Belgium because people need them.
A number of petitions have been filed in France calling on the government to reclassify books as essential, but there's been no change of plan so far.
Well, we're wrapping up the show with a publication that lets the pictures do the talking, showing off the work of 300 female photographers. A world history of female photographers shines a light on the women whose names did not necessarily go down in art history, featuring portraits, landscapes, documentary and photojournalism. It's a discussion and a display of the female gaze in action. We'll leave you with a clip. Otherwise, do remember to check out our website for more arts and culture. You can also keep up with us on social media too. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.
You have enjoyed your program with Air France Protect, promising you a pleasant trip with total peace of mind.
France 24. Every art form,